Hello people of the internet, and welcome to day 27 of Red and Stat Autism Acceptance Month. And I just had to wear this t-shirt again because I mean it's obvious, isn't it? So yes, of course, today's topic is logic. Yeah. I've taken painkillers for migraine. I might be a bit all over the place. So I think autism and logic is actually a thing that you can talk about. I don't know what I'm doing with my hair. And well, the experience is that, my experience is that sometimes neurotypical people seem to have different logic than me, which is a bit weird. And there's just sometimes things that are logic to me seem to be not logic for other / neurotypical people / not autistic people. There's a word for it, but I've temporarily forgotten it. But I think more often actually things that should be logical or seem logical to other people aren't really logical for me. And it's kind of there's this weird thing where like either I instinctively, or for most things, not all, but most, I either instinctively understand and immediately understand something, or my brain just kind of goes la 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 la, and I don't even really know. It just refuses to compute anything. And usually I found out that it's just when that happens, it's like, you know, have you ever read a text but sort of zoned off, and your sort of body was physically continuing the act of reading, but your brain wasn't actually parsing anything that was happening in the text? So you read a paragraph or page or whatever, and you actually don't remember a single word. That's kind of what happens. But I can read, for example, if it's a question or anything, I can read that however much I want to, and however concentrated I want to. My brain just immediately throws out the information again, and I don't remember. I can't even get the words to stay in my brain long enough to remember them and to understand them, I guess. And sort of an example that I've given already in the video about autism and what was called autism and intelligence. It was a question that was apparently asked to me when I was given an IQ test. And I couldn't answer it. I couldn't answer it back then, and then I was reading that years later and I couldn't answer it either. And what I ended up finding out, without going too much into detail, because I explained that in greater detail in the other video, that I ended up realizing that there was one thing that I was misunderstanding, and it was the meaning of paper snake. And I was thinking about one of these paper snakes that are like all of these little strips of paper glued into rings and then interlinking, and then you sort of glue a face. I don't know, we did that in kindergarten once. And sort of that was a paper snake for me. But what they wanted was 2 strips of paper, you know, glued together. But it wasn't just, I think back when I was asked that question on the test, nor when I read it in the report from the test years later, could I really identify it. The words just didn't stick in my brain, and it took me a good 20 minutes of absolutely forcing my brain to stay on that, to realize why I didn't even know what to do. It was very easy. It's just ask how long is, the final papers, like gluing two pieces together, and then, they have a certain length, and you glue them with a certain overlap, and then how long is the final result. And that's very, very easy. You should do that. You should be able to sort of get to the result. But I just didn't know what to do, and I couldn't articulate what to do, and it just completely didn't happen. And basically because my brain decided that there was information missing, and the exercise wasn't logical, I guess, and just immediately threw it out because it was logical. It's not okay. And it didn't tell me about why. It just did that on its own to tell my consciousness so that I maybe could have articulated what was wrong with it. It would just, and I have the similar problems like that, where just things that everyone else assumes to be logical and true just aren't. Mostly because my brain thinks more specific, which I think it's an autistic trait, that sort of detail-oriented thinking. And another example, for example, philosophy, actually. And sort of, I don't know, I was listening to a podcast about philosophy and something, I don't know, and I don't remember what concept they were talking about, honestly, but there was this idea mentioned that water and H2O are the same thing. And I completely couldn't understand anything else, because my brain kept getting hung up by the fact that water and H2O are not the same thing. First of all, H2O is a single molecule. And I don't think we would describe that as water. I'm pretty sure you could find multiple of H2O in the air, but we don't call the air water, so obviously they can't be the same thing. And usually water contains a lot more than a lot of H2O molecules, because pure H2O is purified water, not water. Or is it called purified? I don't know what it's called in English. Maybe? Pure H2O that's been more or less, everything that's gotten rid of. We don't actually usually call water. We have a specified name for it because it's so rare. So, H2O and water are not the same thing. I think. I mean, I'm not a chemist, but I'm just a linguist. So I couldn't understand that, because that just didn't make sense, because the central assumption just wasn't true for me. And there's always this thing where I know something's off, but I don't know what, because my brain refuses to tell me, because it just says that's not logical, goodbye. It just results in a processing error, but you don't know what. Those, you see those photos of Windows or something giving you an error message with an error has occurred and just an OK field and nothing else. You don't know what's happening, but apparently something's wrong. Actually, the greatest error message that I have had on a computer was, there was a problem a problem has occurred starting the problem solving application, something like that. It was in another language I'm having to translate. And to this day, I regret not making a screenshot of that so much. Because that's the most brilliant thing that Windows has ever done, I think. Yeah. Anyway, back to the point. There's a similar thing that actually happens. There's my more or less last example for this, where sort of my brain just can't ignore certain things. Like, I remember back in physics at school, I was taking physics until, I wrote my exams. And I generally, I liked physics. But the problem was, it wasn't one of the best grades I had still, I think. But the problem was that, a lot of times in physics you ignore certain things, like air resistance, for example. And like there'd be exercises where like I don't know, you're throwing a ball with a certain, and it has a certain velocity and a certain, at a certain angle and so on, and you need to calculate at which point the ball hits the ground, neglecting air resistance. And my brain just can't do that. It's just like, but that happens, that, it doesn't do like perfect thing. It doesn't happen. And so I kept getting wrong results. I remember we had these multiple choice questions that were just graphics, and it was like, I don't know, there was a moving vehicle and someone was dropping something from it, and we had to select the right trajectory. And I just kept getting this wrong because my brain was just incapable of ignoring air resistance, because but I've seen it be like this. Why can't it be like this? Even though I was obviously aware that there is air resistance, but like, my brain just can't edit that out. But I mean, that's a point where I actually more or less know where that's coming from. But for example, electronics, my brain, there's something wrong with that apparently, that I don't understand, but my brain isn't telling me what it is, and I can't figure it out. And the whole thing just doesn't make sense, because my brain is just refusing to process anything, and I don't know why. It's just, I mean, that's sort of, I'm not really doing that anymore, because, I mean, I'm studying linguistics, but what I also don't understand is grammar. It just doesn't, my brain just refuses to process that, and I don't know why. I don't know. Which can be, a bit unfortunate, but luckily most of it's comparative linguistics, actually, that makes more sense, because usually individual grammars don't actually make sense in the, bigger picture. They're just random rules for certain languages. And in comparative linguistics, you deal with things differently, and luckily with those things I can deal. But, I mean, that's a lot of negative examples, honestly, so I wanted to give a positive thing at the end, because I'm actually kind of fed up of all the negative things that I've been talking about and so on. I don't know if I've been talking about negative things, but it seems like it. But the sort of logic, the sort of need for things to be logic in order to understand them and to even process them in a way. There's one area of knowledge especially where I think that's actually helped me a lot, and that is horse riding. And well, I discovered, natural horsemanship when I was about, I think, 12, and I haven't shut up about it since. And I just covered it because a lot of the sort of tools and things that you do in normal dealing with horses just didn't make sense to me. And you just sort of told them, but why? So I just kept reading stuff until something made sense. And what I ended up discovering from that, a lot of those things don't actually make sense. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. And a lot of the instructions are just things that someone has at some point said because apparently to them it makes sense, and everyone's just repeating them and no one really knows why. And sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and so, I mean, the result of that, it hasn't been that, I don't know, I'm like a world-class champion rider, whatever. Mostly the result of that has been that I just do very extremely subversive horsemanship. But anyway, I think it's good because it ended up with me, putting my relationship with the horse and the horse's well-being over the method. And I would say that's a good thing. So yeah, that was kind of rambly and a bit all over the place. But anyway, that was the video. I hope that it somehow made sense and has been enjoyable. And if it was or wasn't and you just enjoyed watching me talk about random stuff, I would appreciate it if you would give it a like. And if you haven't already subscribed to this here lovely maybe not channel. And I will see you tomorrow with a Star Wars t-shirt, I think, instead of a Star Trek t-shirt. Goodbye.